What's up, fight fans? Ryan Moody, Jimmy Smith, our MMA show. Look, there's some business we have to take care of. There's some timing issues. I'm going to be gone this weekend because I'm going to be at Pacquiao Thurman. Ryan Moody's going to have to contain his jealousy for that one. So I'm not getting back until Sunday. So our wrap-up of UFC San Antonio won't be out till Tuesday. We also have a weight-cutting episode the fans wanted to hear about. That'll be behind this one, and our breakdown of Pac Thurman pre-fight. But before we get started, we'll get to the podcasters, the Podbeaners, and we'll get to the United States iTunes reviews later. We have some international iTunes reviews to catch up with. We didn't have access to the international reviews of our iTunes. We have them now, so we want to thank everybody. It's going to be a little speed reading involved here, but bear with me. Here are the people who left us reviews on iTunes internationally. We so appreciate you. R. John B., Griff Shanks, Mr. Horselegs, love that one, MB here. It looks like Noral Dorado, Thomas L83, Turk 3789, Sam P. 1997, Cisco Cod, Brad 931319, RJS 512, Mark Fellows, Blake D. Mack, Digital Bath MMA, N6, John Kersley, Sam Chine, Never Trading, Kraken with K's, 89, and this is Tony Palestini, I believe, S. Tub ZE, Mr. Animal, Dev GRN, Righty 209, and Hi Mike. We appreciate every single one of you, and we will be listing the U.S. iTunes a little bit later, but that's our internationals, and we so appreciate you. Now, without any further delay, let's get into UFC on ESPN4, Dos Anjos versus Edwards, San Antonio, Texas. Ryan Moody, you think this is a great card and is going to have some great action. I happen to agree with you 100%.
Before we get into it, just one final note. We changed audio carriers last week. We actually realized tonight that we still need to change audio carriers because we had a little bit of issue after the premium podcast on weight cutting and the Manny Pacquiao Thurman preview. So we literally did an hour of podcasts before this one. And we were like, all of a sudden things weren't working right. So I was concerned, as I always am, about audio quality, making sure you guys get something that sounds like it's not recorded in our basement, even though it kind of is recorded in my basement. However, I reached out on Twitter to followers of the show, John Mattingly, Killa, Flo, and Justin Carter, and each one of you were kind enough with your time to confirm with me it's either the show that still sounds great or it's our illustrious, similar-sounding voices, Jimmy. But nevertheless, we are here to talk about UFC. And, to me, I think it's just general fight week hype, man. I'm super excited. There's a great card with names even casuals know. There's a great boxing match. I mean, what more could you want from a weekend other than to take part of it, which, you get to do. So, there's some jealousy, but I'll get to watch it on Fight TV. If you guys don't have it, I would recommend that you go use Fight to get the get the pay-per-view. They've supported our podcast the rest of the month. We're giving away a code to the Pac Thurman fight if you want to watch it. But let's transition now completely to UFC. I love this, Jimmy. I've always wanted to say this. A rematch 11 years in the making, Jimmy. Andre Arlovsky, Ben Rothwell. To me, there's a lot of common themes on this card. Ben Rothwell, he's really not won a fight since he failed his drug test. I think he looked fair against Ivanov, even though he lost. Arlovsky, though, man, he's on the wrong side of things for basically the past, 2 years, 3 years. I think he's basically 2-11 his last handful of fights. Realistically, I think either guy loses, you make a case they're out of the UFC. But with that said, I like what I've seen from Arlovsky more recently than what I've seen from Rothwell. I think he's looked better. But, hey, he's going to have a little bit more confidence with that 11-year-old knockout from Affliction in his hat, right?
Now, I called that fight. I don't know if you know that. That makes me feel old. I actually called that one live. And that's one of the things I remember about that fight is blood sprayed the camera. It was one of those we're watching it, and Andre just creamed him. Creamed Ben Rothwell with, I believe it was a right hand, and blood sprayed all over the camera. And that was an interesting moment. But in a sense, Andrei Arlovski, what this is about to me, I think Ben Rothwell, in the streak he had, where he beat Brandon Vera, overrated. A lot of people, Brandon Vera has a lot of shine off that win. But Alistair Overeem, Matt Mitrione, Josh Barnett by submission, which was huge. In a sense, you could argue he kind of peaked a bit more than Arlovski, but Arlovski's been more consistent, even though he hasn't been on the winning side. Andrei Arlovski, for a heavyweight who has gotten by, I don't say gotten by, but has used a lot of speed. That was always an attribute he had more than other heavyweights, has lasted a lot longer at the elite level than most heavyweights with his skill set. If you need speed and you're a big guy, that generally doesn't last that long. The fact that he's still, he's not winning, but he still has been competitive over the last few years, that's really extraordinary. Rothwell, for a while there, looked like he might have a decent UFC career, and he's had a decent career, but he's never quite been contender caliber. Now, I don't know if that changes with a win over Arlovski. It probably doesn't. It's two guys on the downside, but who can salvage what with the amount of time they have left? That's a big question going into this fight. Forget the one that happened 11 years ago. That was a prime Andrei Arlovski. He was really firing on all cylinders. Ben Rothwell was just getting started. Now they're on the veteran side, and who can get that last win of their career or that last maybe spike on the downside? We'll see.
It's funny. I was at the UFC Johnson versus Bader card where he beat Barnett and did that super cringy laughing promo at the end, which, as soon as I heard it, I was like, oh, okay. I really don't want to be here right now. That it was, I know. Yeah, that's exactly what it sounded like. That was actually a pretty good replication, Jimmy. You did good. Good job out of you.
I try.
Moving forward, Hernandez versus Trinaldo. And I get to say it again. A fight 7 months in the making. Because this one was originally scheduled for UFC 233. To me, honestly, Hernandez has a lot to prove. He just lost the biggest fight of his life against Cowboy. Trinaldo is no stranger to young fighters, man. He's practically the gatekeeper here. But the reality is most contenders tend to get past him. I just question, and I actually went back and looked. I questioned the last time Trinaldo's really fought somebody that's got that aggression, has that hunger, thankful to be off the regional scene of the UFC. Last guy I really saw that checked those boxes for me was Chad Laprise back in 2015. I think you throw a couple extra months into a game plan here for Hernandez as well. And I just have a hard time seeing this go in Trinaldo's way.
Yeah, the last real tough up-and-comer, he beat Yancy Medeiros. That would be one to me. Obviously wins over, a loss to Chiesa. It's been back and forth a little bit for Trinaldo, but he's stocky. He's strong. When he hits you, he can lay you out. I was cage side when he beat Evan Dunham with a brutal knee to the body, if you remember that one. Hernandez, the question I have here was, if you remember, he looked great against Alban Mercier. That was a big one for him. The knockout over Beneil Dariush, very tough veteran, and it was like he announced himself with that one. The Donald Cerrone fight, a huge step back. He had a lot of juice. I was asked on the Fox desk before he fought Cowboy Cerrone about who I think was the next of the up-and-comers who had the highest ceiling. I said Alexander Hernandez. I really thought he was going to do great things. Bit off a little bit more than he could chew against Cowboy Cerrone. Trinaldo a little bit more consistent. At least we've seen him against young talent. Doesn't always win, but he's won often enough. We haven't seen Alexander Hernandez bounce back from a loss against a veteran in the UFC. So Trinaldo, obviously not in his physical prime per se, not a great fighter, but he swum in there with sharks before and he's been okay. Hernandez, coming off a big loss, mentally, how does he right the ship? Because there was a lot of juice behind this kid a little while ago.
I think what I was trying to say more to that point, though, was I firmly believe someone that's went regional and made it to the UFC still has that burning desire. And I'm not saying Yancy Medeiros didn't, but what I'm saying is when Yancy Medeiros fought Trinaldo in 2016, Medeiros had been in the UFC for probably 3 years, had been in Strikeforce part of that. So he wasn't really fresh off that regional scene the same way Hernandez is now. I actually think that changes a fighter's mindset a lot. I mean, he's coming into this fight with something to prove anyway. Check that loss to Cowboy Cerrone, and I really think he probably feels like he's in a must-win situation, even though he's probably not in all reality.
Yeah, but it's also a guy like Hernandez. They don't just lose to a Cowboy Cerrone and come back, and a smart coach, let me put it this way, would say, get the W and impress later. Get back on the horse, remember how to do it, get through this fight, and you'll be okay. Hernandez, I think, might want to come back and just get back to ripping, get back to the spotlight, get back to some big water cooler moment that's going to make people remember Alexander Hernandez come Monday. The problem is Trinaldo is not a veteran you want to pull that shit with. He's not going to be, he's not a guy that's easy to, look great against. He's stocky, he's strong, he's experienced, he's well-rounded. James Vick, a very tall, rangy, tough guy to get around. I called his fight in Austin. I think it was Austin. I know it was Texas against James Vick. It was Vic Trinaldo. And, Vic didn't look great. Trinaldo just kept coming forward, tough as hell, hard-nosed, aggressive. You're not going to look great against a guy like this. Let you catch him right on the chin. Get the win and move on. Don't try to make a statement on Trinaldo. He's too tough of a veteran for you to go out there thinking you're going to look great. Go out there, get the win, do what you got to do, then move on and impress again. So psychologically, I think that's a big line he has to walk. And if you're his coaches, you want to keep him right on that line. Hey, win. You don't have to be impressive, because when you get creative with a veteran like this, you try and get tricky, you try and get a quick knockout, try and do something flashy like you did against Beneil Dariush, it might bite you in the ass.
You know who else James Vick isn't going to look good against?
Please, go ahead.
Dan
Segue
Hooker.
that one.
Segue. Segue to end all segues. To me, James Vick, man, this is a real crossroad fight for him. Let's be fair. He was actually doing pretty decent until he ran into Justin Gaethje. Personally, I think all the trash talk he did leading up to that fight really hurt him mentally. You chalk in a fresh loss there to Paul Felder, where he took a good bit of damage. I don't think that helps things either. Meanwhile, Hooker is a striker. I think he's a sneaky striker. I mean, okay, I get it. He's coming off the loss to Barbosa, but there's no real shame in that. I just don't think his confidence has been put in check the same way Vic's has. And really, I don't think he's going to lack much confidence, considering he's finished every fighter he's fought since 2017 when he moved to welterweight. I just really see everything stacking up for Hooker to have a really dominant win here.
Well, also, Vic in the past, to me, is a confidence guy. He's a guy who, when things are going great, he's great. When they're not going great, you could kind of see against Justin Gaethje how tentative he was, how he didn't really feel the fight. It was easy for Gaethje to really just bully him against the fence and have his way with him. Same thing with Felder. The veteran fighters, when he didn't feel like he was in control of the octagon, different guy. Against Trinaldo, even though Trinaldo was tough at the end, he felt he was in control the entire time. When he's taken on other up-and-comers, James Vick his confidence was sky high. And then when it's not, it's a different person. Dan Hooker in his last fight just fell the punch to the body against Edson Barbosa, against a veteran guy. That happens. But Hooker hasn't had those up and down, I feel like it's all mental kind of things. Very tough Yair Rodriguez. Jason Knight lost by decision. That was a while ago. 4 solid wins in a row. The Gilbert Burns win, I thought Gilbert Burns was on his way to that contender elite status, and Hooker just flattened him. So it's one of those things where I see Dan Hooker less of an up and down mental kind of fighter. James Vick, the flashier record, but when he hasn't had 1,000% confidence, it's a different guy. There are 2 James Vicks. And if Hooker comes in with confidence and takes away James Vick's confidence, the guy just doesn't recover well from those moments.
Justin Gaethje turned him into a rainbow. I mean, literally, his body bent like a rainbow. It was incredible.
Craziness. A robot, if you turned it off, and it's like exactly like an animatronic James Vick and Pirates of the Caribbean, it malfunctions. That's what it looked like.
Whoa, Jimmy, let's slow down, because we don't want to insult James Vick the same way we insulted Uriah Faber.
What, people were complaining about that?
Yes. But we made up for it.
Wow. What were they complaining about?
We were too hard on Uriah.
I don't read the comments.
They were upset that we were putting him on a hill beside Mount Rushmore as one of the second best fighters to never win a championship.
Why is that bad?
I don't know. I'm not the one that wrote the comment. I'm the one that stated the opinion that I had, as did you that brought the comment on.
To me, that's a compliment.
I do too. Maybe it was. Maybe we went too far when we turned his ass chin into the entrance. I don't know, but at some point they got upset that we said it.
So that was you, by the way. But okay, so but saying just to go over this real quick. Dan Henderson, love him to death, great guy. Kenny Florian, love him to death, great guy. Uriah Faber, love him to death, great guy. Those are three guys who are probably the best fighters in UFC history to never win a title. Dan Henderson and Ken Flo both got 3 opportunities apiece. Uriah Faber got 4. That right now it's my 3-headed Mount Rushmore. There's one more head somewhere. I gotta think about it. To never win UFC gold. And I love all 3 of those guys. That's my last statement on that. Go ahead.
And Michael Bisping, you were so close to being on that Mount Rushmore too, buddy.
So close, dude. So close. But here's the difference. And now we're getting a little sidetracked here. Bisping never beat those elite guys. It wasn't just championship fights. He generally did. If there was a title eliminator, he didn't win it. It wasn't just, these guys got a lot of title opportunities and never won. Bisping only got 1. Bisping never won the title eliminator. Every time he would get close, he would lose. And these guys got multiple opportunities at a title and just weren't quite there at the time. So that's the thing, is that there are a lot of fighters who won a lot of fights and never won a title. These guys had a lot of opportunities at titles and never got it. Bisping only got 1 and made the most of it. But he had lost a lot of title eliminators before that. That's important to keep in mind.
I would really challenge anybody after now it's probably an hour, 20 minutes of straight recording, somebody that doesn't get sidetracked. It just happens to bleed over into the show.
It does. We've been recording for a long time, people. So it's going to happen. But go ahead.
All right, Jimmy, you know I love personal fights. The personal fight of the night. Greg Hardy, Juan Adams. It's ironic to me, and I don't know if anyone said this, that in the NFL, Greg Hardy's nickname was the Kraken, and in UFC, Juan Adams' nickname it's like the Kraken versus the Kraken. Anyway, listen, Adams has been calling out Greg Hardy for years, if you didn't know this. Basically, he's channeled all this anger about his domestic violence past into Greg Hardy. Both these guys, to call a spade, seem like long shots to get into the UFC. I'm glad they're both here. I love they've got the NFL credentials, even though Adams was just a practice squad guy. Just obviously Hardy took that NFL ride just a little bit further. But you know what? Personally, when you have a problem with somebody in a fight, that's only going to get you so far. But the problem is, everybody that fights Greg Hardy kind of has that chip on their shoulder going in. I think that Greg Hardy's cardio at some point is going to show up big. It showed up in the DQ loss, and I'm shocked it's that bad when he trains at ATT. All he's really shown me is knockout power. And I know that hate is a really, really good motivator. And if Juan can take that hate that he has for Greg Hardy and weather that storm and get it into the second, get it into the third, I honestly think he wins this fight. I really do. And I've not picked against Greg Hardy in the past. This is going to be only, I guess, really the first time I've done it. And I really think that Juan Adams is going to be the guy that gives him problems.
I happen to agree with you. And I think it's about complementary strategies that are opposite. Meaning, if I'm his coach, I know you hate this guy. I know you don't like him. Fucking hold off. Don't get in a firefight early because you're pissed. That is Greg Hardy's path to victory. Is Juan Adams comes out, they sling huge punches at one another. I hate you, you hate me, and Greg Hardy can put out probably anyone in the heavyweight division. I'm not saying anything that isn't obvious. Any hard puncher can knock out any other hard puncher. So don't give him that opportunity. Contain that rage and drag this fight into the second and third round. Greg Hardy, I was once again doing Sirius XM this week with RJ Clifford, and we're talking about John Jones and people taking shots at John Jones on social media. All of his opponents do. And John Jones tweeted out recently he's sick of these guys going after him. Dude, you've done bad things. You're an easy mark. You're an easy target for people who want to get under your skin, who want to make something a big deal. You did enough stuff that it's easy to hate you. Greg Hardy, first off, coming from the NFL and getting a ticket right into the UFC because you played football is going to get you some animosity to begin with. Being a disgraced football player who went down for domestic violence is going to just give everybody another edge. At 4-1, you have to wonder how much experience he has in dealing with this shit. John Jones has been dealing with people, if not picking at him, certainly fans picking at him, all this stuff for years. The guy's an experienced mixed martial artist with a history of poor decisions outside of the octagon. Greg Hardy just made the transition to MMA, hasn't really spent years. Remember when he had his domestic violence problem, he wasn't playing. You're suspended, you can't play. So this is the first time he's actually out there competing with people going after him personally. He's not necessarily, he doesn't have the mental armor of a veteran fighter who has been dealing with this kind of harassment for a long time. So it's going to be interesting to see how Greg Hardy deals with it. And cardio has been his issue. All these emotional things kind of burn you up. They get you to use too much gas. They get you to spend your energy in negative ways. So if Juan Adams fights a remotely intelligent fight, I'm with you. I think he can win. But it's going to be a matter of who contains their emotions in the right way at the right time. Make a couple good decisions, you can beat Greg Hardy. I don't think it's that difficult.
Staying in the heavyweight division, Harris and Oleinik, to me, I really think maybe it's just one that I paid attention to. Harris is one of these first guys with the tainted supplement comeback. And really, despite that no contest, he's technically on a 3-fight win streak. He gets the ground ace that I'm sure you're going to talk about in Oleinik, who unfortunately is just coming off the career resurgence knockout from Overeem. But really, I think it's ground game or bust. And we've mentioned this before with Oleinik's fights. I really think, though, Harris is the guy that he can get down to the ground. I went back and watched the Verdum fight, and it was just him being careless with his stance. If Verdum is going to get him down, I think Oleinik is right at that same level. And I think that either Harris is going to get, I guess, maybe complacent a little bit. I hate to use the word lazy, but I just don't think he's going to be as on point as he should be. And I think this is going to be a submission for him.
Well, also, Overeem has a very underrated submission game. I remember when he was at 205 in Pride, the dude had a hell of a submission game. A really, really good one. So he's kind of used it less at heavyweight, Alistair Overeem. But going to the Oleinik fight, I kept telling people, this guy can also submit you. He hasn't done it a whole lot in the heavyweight division. Back when he was a 205er, he got you in a guillotine. He could finish your ass in Pride. Really outstanding submission game. He just didn't use it that much since he's moved up in weight class, but he can do it. So that was another fact in the Oleinik fight. He's taking on somebody in Alistair Overeem who does have an excellent submission game. But Oleinik, what's weird about Oleinik is, first off, he goes for this no-gi Ezekiel choke. And I have trained with Alexei Oleinik. I rolled with him when I was in Holland for an M1 show. I was training at the M1 gym, and he was there, and, we grappled against each other. He goes for that Ezekiel choke ad nauseum. He goes for it over and over in every position. Okay? He just constantly goes for it. And he'll work from half guard, he'll work from open guard, in these really funky positions that other heavyweights just don't use. So that's the thing about Alexei Oleinik, is he'll pull guard on your ass like he did against Junior Albini and go for this choke where you're like, oh, I'll stop the takedown, and he'll pull half guard on you. He'll do these crazy fucking rolls and weird stuff that other heavyweights don't do just to get into this Ezekiel position. So I thought he'd run into a stumbling block against Overeem, and he did. I don't think he does against Walt Harris. I just don't think Walt Harris has the ground experience to deal with everything Oleinik can do, because Oleinik it isn't just a straight double leg to top control to a submission. He doesn't do that. So Walt Harris has to be ready for every little thing. And I don't know if he has the depth and the experience at the elite level to deal with that. Oleinik did a lot of stuff that when I was just doing jiu-jitsu with him that only lightweights do. It was weird. It's really strange rolling with the guy, but he doesn't roll like other heavyweights. So that's the kind of thing that I don't think Walt Harris right now has the experience to catch up to him. That's going to be the problem. Overeem did. Overeem did have the experience to deal with him. And also, I think they had trained together before. So at least he had seen that kind of thing before. And so Oleinik, I think, gets a submission win. But if Harris puts one on you, man, he can finish your ass. Very big heavyweight.
Main event here, RDA, Leon Edwards. And before we get into this, because I've listened to some other analysts on this, and I'm really interested in your opinion, Jimmy. There are people that are making a big deal about the common opponents, particularly guys like Kamaru Usman, Donald Cerrone. But when I look at them, those fights were years apart with each other, and I don't know if I can look at 2015 Kamaru Usman against Leon Edwards and 2018 Kamaru Usman versus RDA the same way. I guess I'm confused why people put so much listen, they both have very good fighters on their records. RDA at this point in his career, he's 29-11. He's going to have losses and wins to elite fighters. It's just the way that it is. But it's almost like people are having to talk Leon Edwards up to RDA's level, it seems.
That's a good point. I think partly because, number one, Dos Anjos is a former champion. Dos Anjos just has more names. He's just been around longer at the elite level than Leon Edwards. If you look at RDA's career, when he first got on the map and started taking on really, really high level guys, depending on where you put that, we're talking 2013 when he first beat Cowboy Cerrone. Then he fought Khabib, Benson Henderson, and Diaz. The run really started 2013. If you look at Leon Edwards and when he kind of got on the map, you could argue fans really didn't know much about him until Donald Cerrone. Obviously, he went over Vicente Luque, but that was a little bit earlier before Luque kind of had the juice he has now. Lost early to Kamaru Usman. The Kamaru Usman who beat RDA, and I was there in Vegas, I called that fight, looked sharp. Super duper sharp. I mean, Usman is one of those guys in the last few fights, he's really gone up. I mean, he's looked impeccable his last couple fights. And Rafael Dos Anjos, unfortunately, had to fight that guy. Now, and the Cowboy Cerrone that Rafael Dos Anjos beat, just, by the way, absolutely destroyed. It's hard to compare those because the kind of fight Rafael Dos Anjos, when he fought Cowboy tends to have trouble in those kind of fights. When it's for the title, when it's a big deal, when all eyes are on him, that's when Cowboy tends to have the most trouble. Rafael Dos Anjos just happened to fight that Cowboy Cerrone. So, yeah, I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock in the whole common opponent thing. MMA math breaks down all the time. It just hardly ever works. You just have to take the guy you're facing stylistically against the other guy, and that's all you can do. And how are both guys peaking now? Leon Edwards coming off a couple of decisions. Donald Cerrone, Gunnar Nelson. He's an excellent striker, good combination. He has nice range. Rafael Dos Anjos, a little bit of a stumble, obviously, against two great wrestlers in Colby Covington and Kamaru Usman. Kevin Lee, I thought he looked great. Robbie Lawler is probably the best performance of his career at 170 pounds. Looked absolutely fantastic. And then Neil Magny. So the rangy strikers he tends to do well against. It's the grapplers that tend to give him problems, especially at 170 pounds. Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington. That's what those guys had. Not that they would stand and bang with Dos Anjos, is that when they decided not to bang, the takedown was always there. Leon Edwards doesn't have that. So to evaluate this fight, you have to evaluate the striking of both guys. But Dos Anjos has shown, Kevin Lee, Neil Magny, he gets on top of you, he can put the hurt on your ass. Outstanding jiu-jitsu. So I think he has certainly a big jiu-jitsu edge. Striking, I would give Leon Edwards the slight edge, but Rafael Dos Anjos is very heavy-handed. It's going to be a great fight.
I mean, it's close. It's a very close fight. Don't get me wrong.
Yes.
Here's my thing. With RDA, even back to the Kevin Lee fight, I had written off RDA. 2 losses, elite competition, okay. I can't write him off anymore. I literally, with the Kevin Lee fight, went into it and said, listen, I'm not going to write him off. Now, in the first round, he looked bad. But he turned it around and he ended up winning the fight. I guess interesting point that you brought up the Cerrone fight with Leon Edwards, because I actually went back and watched that one. And once I went back and watched it, I remembered that after that fight, Mike Perry actually said that wasn't Cowboy Cerrone, that was Donald. Because, it just was like Donald didn't, I guess Cerrone, it was just like he didn't show up. And I think in that fight, if you really go back and focus, Edwards controlled the pace on the feet. And he really allowed Cerrone to not get any rhythm going. I don't think that he's going to be able to do that against RDA. And if it goes to the ground, it's probably even worse because, as you just said, RDA is a monster on the ground. To me, I really just don't see where people are putting Leon Edwards at this level that he may not be at. Sure, he can make it a close fight, but I really don't see him winning this fight at all. If you go back and look at other fights against RDA, I was giving guys clean opportunities to win. I just don't see Leon Edwards on that same level. It's a fighter's chance at this level. Everyone's elite, but I just don't think Leon checks enough boxes to come out victorious.
It's a step-up fight for Leon Edwards. Make no mistake. I don't see this as a step-up fight for Rafael dos Anjos. Not that he automatically wins or won't be tough or anything like that. Rafael dos Anjos has taken on better talent than Leon Edwards. He hasn't won every single time, but this is not the Mount Everest for Rafael dos Anjos. You could argue he's fought better fighters, more experienced, champions, etc. Leon Edwards, I think this is arguably, and remember, Kamaru Usman was in 2015, I think this is the toughest fighter of his career. Meaning, Vicente Luque now, I think, is a much tougher fight. Kamaru Usman now is a much tougher fight. Maybe Cowboy Cerrone back then would have been a tougher fight. Right now, in 2019, Rafael dos Anjos is the toughest fighter Leon Edwards has ever faced. Just in when he's fighting them and what they bring right now, this is his toughest challenge. Not that he can't overcome it, but he just has a bigger mountain in front of him than Rafael dos Anjos has. I think dos Anjos has done better against better guys.
I would tend to agree. So with that said, we want to thank everybody that has supported our show. This is, I believe, it's hard to keep track. I mean, we were 40 episodes. We literally recorded, this is the third one tonight. So we are episode 43. We have also made the transition to YouTube. So if you want to go support the show there, you're more than welcome to. As Jimmy said, unfortunately, scheduling conflicts and Jimmy just being a professional in the mixed martial arts and boxing world is going to delay our recap until Tuesday, but we will absolutely be back then to cover it for you. And then we will look forward to the UFC 240 card highlighted by Holloway and Edgar. Appreciate you guys checking this out, and we will be back in the week with more commentary.